DJI's punishing release schedule keeps right on trucking, and a shiny new mid-tier drone joins the roster. I noticed that the hype surrounding the build-up to the release of this drone has been far more muted than for other models in the range, and it made me wonder if we are now past peak drone. Has everyone that wanted a drone bought one now? Are the majority of drone purchases upgrades and not first-time purchasers? It's a thought, isn't it? Now then, about this video. My channel's subscriber count is inching upwards, but it'll be at least another 94,000 subscribers until I get sent a drone by DJI. But as with all the prior releases, I'm more than happy to provide context and supply analysis for this newly released drone and maybe help you guys decide whether or not the Air 3 is a smash or a pass. Whenever DJI release a new drone, hundreds of videos drop the second the embargo is lifted, and it was no different this time round. What I did notice, however, is that in amongst the usual glut of pointless puff-piece marketing videos devoid of criticism, some of the big-name influencers split ranks and were actually less enthusiastic than usual about the Air 3. The lukewarm reception for this drone didn't appear to be because it was a bad drone, but, in my opinion, simply because they were struggling to see the point of it in relation to the other drones in the DJI lineup. But before we address that concern and discuss precisely what DJI have chosen to include and exclude in this flying camera, let's consider the bigger picture. The Air 3 is of course the follow-up to the well-respected Air 2S. Like the Mavic 2 Pro that I still fly myself, the Air 2S was considered something of a high watermark in DJI's history. It has a cumulative 5-star rating on Google after over 2,700 reviews, and has been praised for its 1-inch sensor, low light performance, value for money, and rock-solid flight dynamics. In fact, if you compare those cumulative scores on Google, only the Mavic 2 Pro gets close to the popularity of the Air 2S, with the same cumulative 5-star score, but slightly fewer reviews, probably because it was a bit more expensive. So it's clear that DJI had a tough act to follow in order to interest drone enthusiasts with the replacement for what is evidently one of their most successful products ever. But just as with the action camera market, the period of intense innovation has passed, and we're now in a late stage of only incremental improvements. Combine that with the global cost of living crisis, increased regulations and licensing requirements, and the vastly improved quality of the drones at the budget end of the range, and you can see that DJI really have their work cut out for them. And based on what everyone's saying, it does appear that they might have missed the mark with this one. Let's talk specs first, and looking at DJI's numbers for this drone, there is a lot to like. The new lens design that first appeared on the Mini 3 Pro is a proven performer, and it has the ability to let more light into the sensor thanks to a new f1.7 aperture on the main camera as opposed to the Air 2S's f2.8. The big new feature, however, is of course the dual camera setup that gets you a 24mm wide-angle camera with a 82-degree field of view and a separate 70mm medium tele with a 35-degree field of view housed above it. That 70mm lens is a welcome addition to the Air range and opens up the possibility of parallax motion in videos for that cinematic look. It does have a slightly reduced aperture, however, of f2.8, but otherwise there is feature parity between the two cameras, which is awesome. The Air 3 has a dual ISO stacked sensor setup, which means you get high quality 4K HDR footage. Furthermore, thanks to a neat quad Bayer filter system, it can take 48 megapixel images, despite the fact the sensor is actually smaller than the Air 2S's. That stacked sensor design, which separates the photodiodes, amplifiers and output circuits, is claimed to offer advantages over the traditional sandwich layer design. Stacked sensors offer improved low-light performance and better autofocus, but, and this is important, they do not directly affect image quality. DJI's protective sensor system has been upgraded on the Air 3 with an omnidirectional vision system, and the video transmission has been bumped up from OcuSync 3 to OcuSync 4 with a claimed range of 20 kilometers as opposed to the 12Ks on the Air 2S. In terms of video codecs, you have a new D-Log M flat color profile alongside HLG, and importantly, this is available on both of those cameras. Bitrate and bit depth remain the same as the 2S at 150 megabytes per second and 10-bit respectively. In terms of video resolutions, it's mixed news with a new 4K 100 FPS mode, but the Air 2S's 5.4K resolution is missing. At least DJI have learned the lessons of the Mavic 3 Pro and that pointless 7X telephoto and made sure the cameras have the same capabilities. The new battery system charges in half the time of the Air 2S and offers a meaningful 45 minutes of airtime. However you look at it, that is a rock-solid build. And based on the video footage I've been pixel peeping here on YouTube, both video and photo quality is up to DJI's usual standard for this class of drone. Given all that, you might think this would be an easy drone to recommend. I mentioned at the start of this video that I thought the drone market was past its period of great innovation. The market has matured almost entirely thanks to the efforts of DJI, and it has entered a period that's similar to that of smartphones. Manufacturers find it increasingly hard to provide points of differentiation between their products and the competition's, and that's definitely the case here. The only difference is that DJI's only real competition is itself, and so rather than trying to outdo other companies, they have to outdo themselves. They need drone enthusiasts to upgrade their existing DJI drones in order to continue making strong profits and to increase growth. And it's for this reason that the DJI product range is so large these days. The problem is that they are evidently hitting a features and performance wall, and the gaps in the real-world differences between their various drones are getting smaller and smaller. We used to get wowed by the addition of things like Active Track, but now I see the reviewers gushing over the fact that it can go up and down vertically slightly faster. It bears repeating that the Air 3 uses the same 48 megapixel sensor and lens as the Mini 3 Pro. Yes, you get an entire second camera with a 70mm lens, but the majority of footage will probably still be shot on that wide-angle lens because aerial footage is all about the big picture. The Air 3 is $600 more than the Mini 3 Pro here in Australia, and the two main differences between those drones is that 70mm camera on the Air 3 and 10 minutes more flight time per battery. Also, let's not forget that the Air 3, like the Air 2S, is a much more substantial drone, sitting in the C1 class in Europe and the greater than 500 gram class here in Australia, which has a $40 registration levy if you fly commercially. Meanwhile, the Mini 3 Pro dodges most registration restrictions globally and enjoys relaxed regulatory controls pretty much everywhere in the world. I think even the biggest DJI fanboy would have trouble justifying a purchase on that basis. Like the Air 2S before it, and the Mini 3 Pro, since we're using it for comparison purposes, the cameras on the Air 3 have a fixed aperture. This, for me, is one of the biggest flaws in this mid-tier class of DJI drone. There are two problems with that fixed aperture. Firstly, it means that everything will be in focus when shooting video, which greatly diminishes the parallax effect you can achieve with the 70mm telly. Secondly, it also means you're probably going to have to dick about with ND filters if you want to fly in bright sunshine in order to fly at that cinematic sweet spot of 24 frames per second. And while we're on the subject of video, let's not lose sight of the fact that the maximum resolution on the Air 3 is actually a downgrade on the Air 2S. Admittedly, the Air 3 partially makes up for the missing 5.4K 5472 by 3078 mode by adding 100 FPS at 4K. But personally speaking, I would far rather have 5.4K resolution. Those extra pixels are extremely handy for punching in when required. I've seen several YouTube influencers state that the Air 3 has a bigger sensor than the 2S, and this is simply not true. The Air 3 has a 1/1.3 inch, and the Air 2S has a straight full 1 inch. Or to put that into physical units for you, the Air 2S sensor is about 16 mils on the diagonal, and the Air 3 is about 11 mils on the diagonal. That's a lot of sensor real estate you've just lost. And while the Air 3 has a vertical shooting mode, it maxes out at 2.7K because it's not actually rotating the gimbal, just punching in and cropping. Can't imagine why you use that vertical mode when you can just shoot everything in regular 4K and just crop it yourself, with the added benefit of having the full 4K frame at your disposal for use everywhere except TikTok and Instagram. So here's the bottom line. The Air 3 is, like all recent DJI drones, a technically advanced and highly capable flying camera, capable of producing beautiful photographs and video footage. If you're looking to buy your first drone and don't care about the increased regulations for flying a heavier drone, it's an excellent choice and you won't be disappointed. But if you currently own an Air 2S, then I reckon it's a different matter. Ultimately, it all boils down to whether or not you're prepared to trade in that lovely 5.4K resolution on that beautiful full 1 inch sensor for a 70mm medium tele with the same smaller sensor as the Mini 3 Pro. All the other tweaks and upgrades are, let's be honest here, kind of irrelevant. Who cares that you can fly 8K further when it's illegal to fly beyond visual line of sight in many countries, including here in Australia? Who cares that you get a bit more flight time from the larger battery? How often do you keep a drone in the air for the duration of its entire battery charge anyway? Those kinds of features are of more interest to enterprise users, survey teams, search and rescue, building contractors, not Barry from Engadine who likes filming waterfalls. The rest of those tweaks and improvements, like the slightly faster ascent and descent speeds, are just DJI fiddling around in the margins of the spec sheet. I've also heard reports that the Air 3 either struggles or completely fails to track surfers, jet skis and boats in active track mode. If it is a bug, that's something they can fix with a firmware update, but it's not a great glitch to have at launch. If cinema grade footage is what you're after, then you should probably be looking at the Mavic 3 and its Hasselblad camera. I'll say it again, Hasselblad. If you're prepared to sacrifice some of that video quality for pricing, convenience, and relaxed regulations, then you cannot go past the Mini 3 Pro. The Air 3 is a highly capable drone, but I'm finding it hard to come up with solid reasons to recommend it because it sits in this weird no man's land. It's neither amazing nor terrible, it's just good. If you prefer the larger drones and you're splashing out 1,700 Australian dollars, that's 1,100 US, then I'd be inclined to pay a bit more for the Mavic 3 Classic at $2,400 here in Australia or $1,600 in the US. Like the difficult second album or the difficult second child, the Air 3 is difficult to recommend. Seems to be that it's a reluctant pass. If there's anything to take away from this, it's that the lack of real competition is messing with DJI. When you consider the innovations they've previously rolled out, such as the original bundled camera and gimbal design on that old Phantom 2, the move to the highly portable folding design of the original Mavic, the first properly consumer-friendly FPV with the Avata, and the premium camera and video quality of the Inspire range, they have pushed consumer drones forward year after year. But lately, they've also become quite boring. Slightly improved battery life and video quality is not going to make die-hard Mavic 2 Pro holdouts like me reach for the credit card. I already have 10-bit 4K D-Log video through a full 1-inch sensor with a Hasselblad camera on my 5-year-old, yes, 5-year-old Mavic 2 Pro. DJI need to properly innovate again to attract my attention, but I'm really not sure what it will take to get me to upgrade. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Nobody can tell the difference between footage shot on DJI's current drones and my old faithful 5-year-old Mavic 2 Pro when 99% of that footage that is being shot is shared on YouTube with its highly compressed video rendering, let alone in the tiny video windows on mobile devices on social media. If you enjoy this content, please gently depress the like button and consider giving me a sub in the hope that one day I too can spend a few weeks making a promotional video for DJI on Lake Garda. Till the next time, guys, ta-ta.